Why was she always the one they laughed at? Why was it her boots echoing in a room that seemed built for taller shadows, heavier voices, men who never doubted themselves? The morning sun stretched long and unforgiving across camp as Martinez tied her laces than they needed to be, as if she could bind her doubts into silence. 23 years old, 5'4", calloused hands, brown eyes that had learned not to flinch. And yet, every step toward the firing range felt like walking through a gauntlet of whispers. Tiny Martinez, kitchen duty soldier. She couldn't carry her own pack, much less a brother-in-arms. They didn't even try to keep their voices low. Some mocked her because it was easy, others because mocking her reminded them they weren't at the bottom. Every sneer, every snicker, it cut deeper than the sharpest blade, but never gave them the satisfaction of a reaction. Her face remained neutral. Inside, though, she carried a storm. The truth was, had carried storms all her life. Back home in Texas, her father's hands came home from construction shifts cracked and bleeding. Her mother scrubbed floors in houses that would never belong to them. Money was tight, sometimes impossibly so. Yet they taught her one thing no one could take away: respect is given, it's earned. And it's earned through work, through showing up day after day, even when the world tries to grind you down. Her father had protested when she first spoke the word military. His little girl, his fragile daughter, but he had seen the fire in her eyes, a fire he couldn't extinguish, no matter how much he feared losing her. And so here she was. The barracks, the drills, the endless inspections, the endless voices telling her she wasn't enough. And still she stayed. Because Martinez had come here for more than a uniform. She had come here to prove that the fire in her chest was real, even if no one else saw it yet. But there was something she hadn't told them, not yet. During weapons training, while the others treated the firing line like a chore, felt something different. Her first time behind the sights, she noticed the wind tugging across the grass. She noticed her own heartbeat, slow and steady when she let it be. She noticed the rhythm of her breathing and how it moved the crosshairs almost imperceptibly. And when she squeezed the trigger, the shot landed true. Instructors noticed, they always notice, but soldiers laughed it off. Beginner's luck, a fluke, let's see her under pressure. The pressure came, and still she hit her marks again and again and again. It only made them mock her more. Quote a recruit, she's a show trick, not a soldier. At night, lying awake in the dim hum of the barracks, wondered if maybe they were right. Maybe she didn't belong here. Maybe all she had was luck and stubbornness. But then she'd hear her mother's voice across the miles. They mock what they don't understand. Show them your strength, not with anger, with excellence. Let your actions speak louder than their words ever could. So she showed up. She studied ballistics while the others played cards. She trained her breathing while they slept. She wrote down calculations in a notebook she kept hidden, pages filled with numbers most recruits would never even think about. She became obsessed with the subtleties: humidity, wind speed, bullet drop, the arc of a round after 2,000 meters. She wasn't just learning to shoot, she was learning patience. Patience, the one weapon she knew they couldn't take from her. Still, the mockery wore her down. Some nights she sat with the phone pressed to her ear, her father's rough voice breaking as he told her he was proud no matter what, her mother's words weaving faith where her own had frayed. Those calls were her lifeline. Without them, she might have broken. 6 months into training, the weapon appeared that would test everything. The M82. Nearly 30 pounds of recoil, power, and intimidation. A rifle whispered about in legend, feared even by seasoned marksmen, capable of reaching 2 miles, capable of shattering bones with its .50 caliber fury. Master Sergeant introduced it with a voice that carried weight. This weapon separates the skilled from those who think they're skilled. His eyes scanned the recruits, pausing briefly on her. And there it was again, the sneer from Private Henderson. Bet Tiny Martinez can't even lift it. The laughter followed. Didn't answer, she didn't even look at him. Her eyes were locked on the rifle. That night she buried herself in research, mechanical specs, veteran accounts, ballistic data that made her old notes look like scribbles in a child's notebook. She devoured every number, every story until her head throbbed. The next morning, it was her turn. The weight heavy in her hands, but not unbearable. She prepared. Her muscles ached, but she'd trained for this exact weight, this exact strain. Settling into prone position, she adjusted her breathing, her sights, her thoughts. The first shot missed. Dirt erupted meters from the target. Snickers rose behind her. The second shot came closer, but still off. The third finally struck the target, not dead center, but solid. Not enough to silence them, but enough to keep her going. The weeks that followed became a blur of discipline. Before dawn, after dusk, in wind, in scorching heat, in silence so deep she could hear her own blood moving. She trained until it felt like an extension of her own body. Still, Henderson never stopped. Wait until she has to make a shot that matters. She'll break. But something had shifted in. The voices weren't as loud anymore. Her confidence grew with each hit. Each day she pushed herself past exhaustion. Her critics weren't wrong. The pressure of combat would be different. But they were blind to something she carried, something honed in the silence of her childhood struggles, an ability to endure. When the breakthrough came, it wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was a simple exercise. Simulated combat, hours in position, distractions, heat, cramps, exhaustion. Targets appeared far, farther, impossibly far. Her shots landed, methodical, unhurried, unbroken. Approached her after, his unreadable face giving only a single nod. Solid shooting, Martinez. It was more than she had ever wanted. Still, Henderson's voice lingered. Range time means nothing when it's real. Maybe he was right. Maybe she hadn't faced her true test yet, but had learned something about herself in those endless hours behind the scope. Something that no mockery, no sneer, no whisper could erase. She belonged here, even if no one else believed it. But she didn't know yet how far that belonging would be tested. She didn't know the stage that waited for her, the shot that would carry her name across the base, and the silence that would follow it. She only knew this: she would not stop. Not for them, not for doubt, not even for fear. And the day was coming when every whisper would fall silent. Why was the competition so important? Why did her name on a list send ripples of disbelief through the entire base? Word had spread quickly. The annual marksmanship competition was coming. And this year, somehow impossibly, Martinez had signed up. The event was more than just a test of skill. It was tradition, almost ritual. Soldiers trained all year for it. Winners didn't just earn trophies, they earned reputations, assignments, doors opening that never opened for ordinary recruits. For many, it meant the difference between blending into anonymity or carving their name into the walls of history. And for it meant one thing above all else: silence. Not the silence of ridicule, not the silence of mockery, but the silence that comes when doubt is finally crushed. She wanted that silence, she needed it. Her instructor, Master Sergeant, supported her decision without hesitation. He had seen what she could do: the patience, the methodical precision, the hours of quiet discipline that few others endured. But others weren't so sure. Colonel, commander of the base, questioned in private. "Are you certain she's ready? This isn't a training drill. This competition draws eyes from headquarters. Poor performance here could mark her permanently." Didn't waver. "Sir, Martinez isn't just good. She thrives under pressure. If anyone has earned a chance, it's her." The colonel nodded, but remained cautious. Years of service had taught him how brutal failure could be, especially in front of a crowd. He didn't want to see a promising soldier broken on the stage where so many careers had either ignited or burned out. Knew none of this. All she knew was the schedule pinned on the barracks wall, the way soldiers laughed when they saw her name among the entrants. Henderson even organized a betting pool, not on whether she would win, but on how fast she would be eliminated. She overheard the whispers. She always did. 2 rounds in, she's done. She won't even hit the first target. Waste of a slot. Their doubt stung. It always did. But this time it fueled her. Every snicker was weight added to the barbell she carried in silence. She doubled her training. Before sunrise, she was at the range. After dark, she was still there, dry firing, visualizing, calculating. She mapped wind shifts like a sailor reading stars. She studied humidity charts. She broke down videos of past competitions until her eyes blurred. Her body ached, her hands blistered, still she pressed on. And yet, just when momentum seemed to be building, the setback came. A malfunction during another recruit's training session caused a safety review. For 2 weeks, access to the was restricted. For it was devastating. The was her weapon, her edge. Without it, she risked falling behind. She adapted. She had no choice. She practiced dry, visualized every motion, every squeeze of the trigger, every recoil pattern she knew by heart. But doubt crept in at night. How much would this gap cost her? Noticed. Quietly, privately, he gave her time with the when no one else was watching. Risking accusations of favoritism, he handed her the weapon and said only, "Make it count." And she did. Every extra hour mattered. Every hidden session kept her edge sharp. The night before the competition, she called home. Her father's voice cracked with pride, though his words carried worry. "No matter what happens tomorrow, we're proud of you. That doesn't change." Her mother's voice was softer, steadier, like the calm after a storm. "Remember who you are. You carry the strength of every woman in our family. Tomorrow is just another chance to show what we already know." Closed her eyes, listening, holding onto their voices like lifelines. The next morning dawned with skies so clear it felt almost like fate. No wind, no storms, just calm air and sunlight over the range. The base buzzed with energy. Over 60 competitors lined up, veterans with years of experience and reputations already carved deep. Spectators crowded in, filling the stands, waiting to see legends in action. And somewhere in the middle of it all, Martinez, the recruit who wasn't supposed to be there. The opening ceremony was short. Sergeant Major Davis, a veteran whose voice carried authority like a drumbeat, stepped forward. "Today you will be tested, not just in skill but in patience, not just in accuracy but in discipline. This competition does not crown the loudest, it crowns the most consistent. Remember that." His words cut through the air. Soldiers straightened. Hearts beat faster. The silence before the storm had begun. The preliminary round started with the basics: close range, rapid fire, shooting under timed conditions. For it was her weakest ground. Her stature slowed her reloads. Her smaller frame made weapon control harder. She wasn't the worst, but she wasn't the best either. Enough to advance, but not enough to silence the whispers. "See," Henderson muttered loudly, "she won't last." But wasn't listening. She never listened to voices anymore. Only her own breathing, only her own focus. The second rounds grew harder, moderate distances, changing positions, environmental distractions. Judges fired noisemakers, threw movement across the periphery. Soldiers cracked under the pressure, scores dropping. Didn't crack. She adapted. Every distraction was just another layer of training she had already lived through in silence. Her shots landed, one after another, not flashy, not dramatic, but consistent. Watching from the side felt something stir. She was doing more than surviving. She was climbing. By the time the sun crept toward its zenith, the field had narrowed to 12. Only 12 remained for the final challenges. And then the announcement. Advancing Private Henderson. Applause, cheers expected. Advancing Sergeant Collins. More cheers. Advancing Private Martinez. The silence was deafening. Shock, murmurs, disbelief. His name echoed across the range like a mistake someone forgot to erase. Soldiers turned their heads. Spectators whispered. Henderson's eyebrows shot up. Then came the sneer. "Well," he said loudly, "I guess we'll see how far luck really carries her." But luck had nothing to do with it. For it was never luck. It was hours alone at dawn, hours at dusk, hours with hands blistered and eyes strained. It was patience, persistence, silence turned into skill. As she stepped off the line, her legs trembling from exhaustion, she knew the hardest was still to come. The distances ahead would push even veterans to their limits, that would decide everything. But deep inside, where doubt once lived, something else now burned. She was ready. Not for them, not for silence, but for herself. And tomorrow, the world would see what that meant. What did it feel like, standing at the edge of the impossible? Standing among soldiers who had been shooting longer than she'd been alive, facing a rifle that could humble even the proudest hands. For Martinez, it felt like silence, not the silence of peace, the silence of pressure, the silence before thunder. The M82 loomed on the firing line, its weight like a dare. 2,000 meters, 2,600, beyond. Shots so distant they bordered on myth. Soldiers with reputations carved into stone would fall short here. And yet, here she was. Her name still echoed across the range in whispers of disbelief. Private Martinez, the underdog, the joke recruit, now one of the 12. As the finalists gathered, Sergeant Major Davis explained the rules. His voice was steady, patient, carrying authority built over decades. You will attempt targets at progressive distances, 3 shots each. Your score depends not just on hits but on consistency. The farther we go, the more difficult it will become. Some of you won't land a single shot. Some of you might. The crowd leaned in. Officers from headquarters adjusted binoculars. Every eye was fixed on the firing line. The first distance, 1,800 meters, over a mile. Competitors took turns. One by one, the thunder of the echoed. Some found their marks, some missed completely. Even veterans sweated under the weight of that scope. Henderson stepped up, confidence dripping like oil. He settled in, methodical, practiced. The crack of his shot split the air and the spotter's call came fast. Hit. Applause rippled. 2 more shots, 2 more hits. Henderson nodded as if this were expected. Then came. The weapon felt heavier than ever, its recoil a living thing waiting to punish weakness. She studied the wind, the shimmer of heat above the sand, the curve of numbers she had memorized in hidden notebooks. Her breathing slowed. First shot, crack, silence. Then the radio hit, center mass. A murmur rolled through the crowd. Second shot, crack, another hit. Third shot, crack, hit again. 3 for 3. Applause swelled, hesitant at first, then louder. Jaw tightened in quiet pride. Henderson's smirk faltered just slightly. But barely heard them. For her, there was only the rhythm of her breath, the numbers in her head, the pull of the trigger. The second distance, 2,200 meters, almost at the weapon's limit. Competitors faltered. Shots went wide, missed by yards. Some left without a single hit. That was merciless at this range. Stepped up again. First shot low, dust exploding short of the target. She felt her heart lurch, heard muffled laughter behind her. Henderson, maybe someone else. It didn't matter. She adjusted, calculated, remembered her mother's voice, patience, patience is strength. Second shot, crack, the spotter's voice hit, edge of target. Her chest loosened, not perfect, but a hit. She steadied again. Third shot, crack, silence, then hit, center. The crowd erupted louder this time. No hesitation, applause mixed with disbelief. Glanced at Colonel, whose expression had shifted, no longer skeptical, now watchful, interested. But Henderson wasn't done. He made his shots too, clean, confident. He wanted her to see. He wanted her to know she wasn't the only one rising. By mid-afternoon, only 6 remained. 6 soldiers who had survived the cut, 6 who could still call themselves contenders. Among them, Henderson, Collins, and unbelievably Martinez. The third distance, 2,600 meters, 1.6 miles, beyond what most soldiers ever even attempted. The atmosphere thickened. Spectators leaned forward, whispering bets, disbelief, hope. Even seasoned officers fell silent, knowing how rare it was to see such attempts. Henderson stepped forward first. His first shot missed. His jaw tightened. Second shot hit. Third shot hit again, solid but not flawless. Then's turn. The target was a speck, barely visible even through this powerful scope. Heat waves rippled across the air, bending light, making distance a living enemy. Her first shot missed by feet. A gasp ran through the crowd. Henderson's smirk returned. But wasn't done. She studied the wind, recalculated everything, adjusted her scope. The world narrowed again. Breath, heartbeat, trigger. Second shot crack, spotter, hit. Applause. She steadied again. Third shot crack, a pause longer this time, then hit, center. The crowd broke into cheers, louder than before. This wasn't luck anymore. This wasn't a fluke. This was something else. Colonel leaned to, voice low. Where did she learn this? Veterans struggle here. She makes it look. He stopped himself. Not easy, but real. Only nodded. Sir, she has what few ever do, talent and obsession together. Now only 3 remained, Henderson, Collins. And then the surprise. Sergeant Major Davis stepped forward, his voice carrying over the crowd. Competitors, there will be one final distance, an unprecedented challenge. 2,996 meters, nearly 1.85 miles, the farthest target ever attempted in this competition. The range went silent. Even the air seemed to hold its breath. Whispers spread. That distance was legendary, almost myth, a shot no one expected to hit. Henderson's face tightened, but he forced a smirk. Collins looked grim, his jaw set. She only breathed steady, steady, as if she had been waiting for this. Henderson went first. 3 shots, all missed, closer on the last but still wide. He lowered the slowly, pride dented but not broken. Collins tried next. 3 shots, all missed. The crowd shifted, restless. If veterans couldn't land it, who could? Then stepped forward. The rested heavy against her shoulder. The world narrowed to numbers, to breath, to the shimmer of a target so distant it seemed imaginary. She calculated everything: wind, humidity, temperature, the Earth's curve itself. Her finger brushed the trigger, smooth, controlled. Crack, the recoil slammed her shoulder. Silence followed. 1 second, 2, almost 3. Then the spotter's voice crackled over the radio. Hit direct center. The silence shattered. Applause thundered. Shouts rose. Officers who had served decades stared at each other in disbelief. His chest swelled with pride he didn't show. Colonel stood, his jaw set in awe. In 30 years, he had never seen anything like it. Martinez, the recruit, mocked, dismissed, doubted, had just made history. And as Henderson stepped forward, his face softened. Not a smirk, not contempt, something else. Respect. He extended a hand. Martinez, that was incredible. I was wrong about you. Accepted the handshake without pride, without gloating. Her voice was calm, even. I didn't do it to prove you wrong. I did it to prove me right. And with that, the whispers around her finally fell silent. But inside, she knew the silence wouldn't last, because proving yourself once isn't enough. Tomorrow, the doubt would return. Tomorrow, new voices would rise. But for now, for this moment, she had done the impossible. What happens after you make the impossible real? What happens when the whispers fall silent, not because they've stopped, but because they've been swallowed by awe? The range was still echoing when lowered, the recoil lingering in her bones like thunder fading into distance. The spotter's words replayed in her head, impossible and yet undeniable. Direct center. Hit. She had done it. The crowd stood stunned, frozen between disbelief and wonder. Then slowly the applause swelled. First scattered claps, then louder, then a roar. It wasn't the sound of polite recognition. It was the sound of a base realizing they had just witnessed history. Stood quietly, her chest rising and falling with each deep breath. She didn't raise her arms. She didn't smile wide. No fist pumps, no triumph shouts. Her victory wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Henderson had approached her then, his smirk erased, his eyes steady, his hand extended, the same hand that had mocked her for months. "That was incredible, Martinez," he admitted, voice raw. "I was wrong. All of us were wrong." She shook his hand, firm, steady, not in gloating, not in revenge, simply in respect. Because respect finally was hers. Sergeant Major Davis called the competition results with a voice weighted by admiration. Private Martinez has not only won today's event, but has achieved something unprecedented in the history of this base. His words carved themselves into memory. Her shot at 2,996 meters will be recorded and reported as an example of exceptional military marksmanship. The ceremony blurred for applause, handshakes, photos. A trophy, heavy in her hands. Officers speaking words she couldn't quite absorb. All she felt was exhaustion, the kind that doesn't come from muscles but from carrying the weight of doubt for too long and finally laying it down. But the whispers didn't stop, they changed. Instead of mockery, there were questions. How did she do it? Where did she learn that discipline? Is it luck or something else? And slowly, curiosity turned into respect. Within hours, her name spread across the base. Within days, word reached division headquarters. By the week's end, her story traveled beyond. Not official reports, not yet. Just voices. Stories shared in mess halls and training fields. A recruit, a woman, a soldier who had done what veterans failed to do. For the first time since stepping into uniform, felt eyes on her that weren't dismissive. Soldiers who once mocked her now nodded when she passed. Some even stopped her awkwardly, humbly, to ask for advice. Private Johnson, one of the loudest voices of doubt, approached her days later. His voice low, almost ashamed. "Martinez, I was wrong about you. Would you show me how you handle your breathing on long shots?" Studied him for a moment, remembering every laugh, every sneer. Then she nodded. "I'll help, but only if you're serious." And he was. They all were. One by one, soldiers who had doubted her came forward, not to apologize in words but to learn through action. And she helped them, not because she owed them, not because she wanted validation, but because she knew what it felt like to stand on the outside, unseen, unheard. Her humility only deepened their respect. Colonel called her into his office days later. His expression was different now, no trace of skepticism. Only admiration, carefully controlled under the weight of his rank. "What you did, Martinez, goes far beyond winning a competition," he told her. "I've seen soldiers shoot for decades and never touch that kind of performance. Headquarters will want to know about you. Specialized units will want to see what you're capable of. You've opened doors most never even glimpse." Nodded, her voice steady. "Yes, sir." But inside she felt the shift. A door opening meant a threshold, and thresholds always came with new shadows. That night she called her parents again. Her father's voice cracked with pride. "They'll never mock you again. You showed them all." Her mother's words were gentler, wiser. "Remember, dignity doesn't speak, it acts. And now that you've acted, you must carry that dignity into what comes next." The words settled deep into her heart. She didn't yet know what came next, but she knew it would demand more than skill. It would demand the very core of her. In the following weeks, daily life transformed. Where once she was invisible, now she was sought out. Younger recruits asked for mentorship. Instructors observed her with quiet approval. Officers included her name in discussions she was never meant to hear. But admiration brought weight. Every shot she fired now carried expectation. Every drill had eyes watching. Every mistake, no matter how small, echoed louder than before. Felt it pressing down, a new kind of pressure. Not mockery this time, but expectation. Respect is heavy, she realized, sometimes heavier than doubt. Late at night, she lay in her bunk staring at the ceiling. The memory of the 2,996-meter shot replayed, but not with triumph, with questions. Could she do it again? Or was it a moment never to be repeated? What if the silence broke tomorrow and the whispers returned, not of doubt, but of disappointment? She clenched her fists, reminding herself. She had trained not for them, not for applause, but for herself, and for the mission, whatever mission lay ahead. Because the truth was, she hadn't joined the military to win competitions. She had joined to serve, to prove not to others but to herself that she belonged where it mattered most, in the field. And whispers had already begun, not the whispers of soldiers mocking her, the whispers of officers speaking in closed rooms. She has the precision. She has the discipline. She could serve in operations beyond this base. Operations most soldiers never saw. Operations where every decision mattered. Didn't know yet how soon those whispers would become reality. For now, she carried her new reputation quietly. She continued training, continued mentoring, continued showing up early and staying late. Respect had come, but she hadn't changed. Because deep down, knew something the others didn't. Her greatest test wasn't behind her, it was still ahead. And when it came, it wouldn't be a competition. It wouldn't be applause. It would be silence, the kind that comes in deserts, mountains, foreign streets. Silence where a single shot can change everything. For now she breathed, trained, waited. The storm would come, and she intended to meet it with steady hands. Why did recognition feel heavier than ridicule? Why did the cheers of victory feel like chains around her shoulders? Weeks had passed since the competition, and yet Martinez couldn't shake the weight pressing down on her. Not the recoil of not the whispers of doubt she had carried for months. No, this was something different, the heavy gaze of expectation. The base had changed. Where once she walked unseen, now every step was noticed. Where once laughter followed her, now nods of respect trailed behind. Privates asked her for tips, corporals studied her stance, even sergeants eyed her during drills, trying to understand what separated her from the rest. Gave what she could. She mentored when asked, offered advice when sought. She wasn't selfish with her knowledge because her mother's words lingered. Let your actions speak louder than their words ever could. And action for meant giving others what she had clawed out for herself, a chance to believe. But each day she felt the shift growing stronger. Officers from outside units visited the base more often, sitting quietly at the range when she trained, speaking softly with afterward. Whispers spread. Whispers about selection, about opportunities, about assignments that require more than ordinary. She ignored them at first. Rumors lived everywhere in the military. But then, one morning, pulled her aside. His expression was grave, though not unkind. Martinez, headquarters has taken notice. Your performance at the competition didn't just turn heads here. It traveled farther, much farther. She said nothing, waiting. They're considering you for specialized operations. Nothing confirmed yet, but the conversations are happening. Stomach tightened. Specialized operations. The words were sharp, heavy. They carried possibilities she had never let herself dream of, but they carried danger too. Studied her face as if trying to measure her reaction. This isn't like competition shooting. Out there, a shot doesn't win applause, it decides life, death, success, failure. You'll face silence no one will clap for, pressure no trophy can balance. You need to be sure this is the path you want. Swallowed hard, her throat dry. Sir, I joined to serve. If this is where I'm needed, I'll go. But inside she wasn't sure. That night, lying in her bunk, she stared at the ceiling as memories rose. The laughter, the sneers, The shot at 2,996 meters, the applause, and then silence. A silence deeper than anything she had ever felt. Was she ready for that silence again, but in a place where no crowd would wait, no colonel would applaud, no trophy would follow? She called her parents. Her father's pride filled the line. This is everything you wanted: recognition, opportunity, doors opening. You'll go farther than we ever dreamed. Her mother's voice was quieter. But don't let their dreams drown your own. Ask yourself, do you want this, or do you feel you must? The question lingered long after the call ended. She wanted it, she thought she did, but she also feared it. Fear of failing, fear of being swallowed by something bigger than she could carry, fear of proving the whispers right that she didn't belong. The following week brought confirmation. Colonel himself summoned her to his office. His desk was neat, his tone measured. Private Martinez, you've drawn interest from units beyond this base, elite units, ones that operate in shadows most soldiers never see. I won't order you into anything. The choice will be yours, but if you accept, understand this, you'll be tested in ways training can't prepare you for. Your skills will matter, but so will your patience, your silence, your ability to endure more than most can imagine. Held his gaze steady though her heart pounded. Yes, sir, I understand. Leaned back studying her. Do you? She hesitated, then spoke softly. Sir, I know what it means to carry doubt, to be underestimated, to face pressure. I don't know what's ahead, but I know I can face it. Not perfectly, not fearlessly, but steadily. The colonel nodded, something like respect flickering in his eyes. Very well, you'll be contacted. And just like that, the door opened. The waiting began. Days turned into weeks, each filled with a strange tension. She continued her duties, continued training, continued mentoring others, but she felt eyes always on her. Officers passing by too often. Instructors asking questions too pointed. Henderson, once her loudest critic, now watching her with a mixture of curiosity and something else, maybe respect, maybe regret. He approached her one evening at the range. His voice was quiet, stripped of sarcasm. You're leaving, aren't you? She shrugged. Nothing's official. But it will be, he said. His eyes met hers. I don't know how you did it, Martinez. I don't know how you turned all that doubt into this. But whatever comes, you'll handle it. I know that now. His words surprised her. They warmed her even as they added weight. Because respect, once given, is never light. Finally, the call came. A briefing, a sealed folder, a room where men and women with eyes like stone explained the basics. Nothing classified yet, nothing concrete, only possibilities. Missions in hostile territory, long-range reconnaissance, silent overwatch, precision shots where failure meant lives lost, not points missed. Sat still, listening, absorbing. Her hands rested on the table, steady, but her chest ached with the quiet drum of fear. She wasn't afraid of the weapon, not afraid of the math, the wind, the distances. She was afraid of herself, afraid of what would happen when silence fell, when she was alone with her scope, her breathing, her decision, knowing that a single squeeze could end one life and save another. After the briefing, she lingered in the empty hall. Her reflection in the window stared back. The small woman with calloused hands, doubted by so many, now being prepared for something few ever faced. She whispered to herself, barely audible, "Am I ready?" And deep inside, another voice answered, "You weren't ready then, but you showed up anyway." She closed her eyes, breathed, remembered her mother's words, "Dignity doesn't speak, it acts." Maybe readiness wasn't the point, maybe showing up was. The storm was coming. And she would face it, not with noise, not with pride, but with silence, patience, and steady hands. What happens when talent turns into responsibility? What happens when skill is no longer a shield against doubt, but a weapon that carries lives on its trigger? Martinez was about to find out. The call came quietly. No ceremony, no fanfare, just orders. She was assigned to a specialized training program, one that didn't appear on base schedules or bulletin boards. She was told to pack light, report to a transport truck at dawn, and say nothing. She obeyed. The drive was long, through stretches of pine forest and empty road. Few spoke. Those who did kept their voices low, as though silence itself had been ordered. When the truck stopped, stepped into a facility that seemed carved out of secrecy, concrete walls, no signs, instructors whose faces gave nothing away. From the first day she understood, this was not about trophies, not about applause. This was about survival, about decisions that could never be undone. The instructors stripped everything back. Skills she thought she had mastered were dismantled, examined, rebuilt. Shooting wasn't just about hitting a target anymore. It was about endurance, observation, discipline that bordered on the unbearable. Hours in position without moving, days without sleep, stalks through forests where detection meant failure, shooting under rain, under blazing sun, under simulated chaos designed to break concentration. But hardest of all wasn't the physical strain. It was the silence, the waiting, the knowledge that sometimes the job wasn't pulling the trigger but holding it, staring through a scope for endless hours, heart pounding, finger hovering, waiting for a command that might never come. Had told her once, sniping isn't about the shot, it's about every second before and after. That's where the weight lives. Now she understood. She wasn't the only recruit in the program. There were others, men and women, who had reputations, who had seen combat, who carried scars on their arms and in their eyes. Some looked at her with curiosity, some with skepticism, a few with outright resentment. One of them, Sergeant, a tall veteran with a jaw like stone, voiced what others muttered. She's here because of a competition. Out there you don't win with lucky shots, you win with staying alive. Didn't answer, she never did, but she trained harder, waited longer, observed deeper. She let her actions answer just as her mother had taught her. Still, the doubts weren't just theirs, they were hers. One night, after 12 hours in prone position under cold rain, her body trembling with exhaustion, she lay awake in the barracks, staring at the ceiling. Questions gnawed at her. Could she do it outside of training? Could she carry the silence of real missions? Could she live with the choices that came through a scope? Her thoughts turned to the competition, to the applause after her record-breaking shot. She remembered the pride, the relief, the respect she had earned. But no one would clap out here. Out here, there was only silence. And silence carried consequences no cheer could erase. Weeks bled into months. The training grew harsher. Physical exhaustion blurred into mental strain. Some recruits broke. Some quit. Others were quietly sent home, their names never mentioned again. Stayed. Not because she was fearless. Not because she was stronger, but because she refused to leave the silence unfinished. Her breakthrough came during a long-range exercise in the mountains. The recruits were tasked with observing a valley from concealed positions, reporting movements, and engaging targets on command. The wind howled, shifting every minute. The cold bit into skin, freezing fingers to steel. Hours passed. Then the signal came. Found her mark, a silhouette over a mile away. She adjusted, breathed, waited. The shot cracked, echoed, struck true. But more important than the hit was what came after: silence. She stayed in position for hours more, resisting every urge to move, every ache in her bones, every scream from her body to rest. When the exercise ended, an instructor approached. His words were few, but they mattered. "You held, that's the difference." And she understood. It wasn't the hit that defined her. It was the endurance. But endurance came at a cost. Some nights, lying in the barracks, dreamt of faces she had never seen, targets that might one day appear in her scope, shadows of lives she might be asked to end. She woke with her chest tight, her heart racing, the weight of her potential decisions pressing like stone. She wrote letters she never sent, pages filled with questions, about right and wrong, about silence and duty, about what dignity meant when it came with a trigger pull. In training, she spoke little, but when she called her parents, her mother's voice steadied her. You carry more than a rifle, you carry choice. Never forget strength is not only in what you can do, it is in what you choose not to do. Those words anchored her through the darkest hours. By the end of the program, only a handful remained. Among them, she wasn't the strongest. She wasn't the loudest, but she was steady, quiet, enduring. The instructors gave no ceremony, no congratulation, just files, orders, next steps. Opened hers and read the words slowly, her heart tightening. Deployment, real-world operations. Her first mission. It wasn't competition anymore. It wasn't training. It wasn't whispers in the barracks or trophies in headquarters. It was life, it was death, it was silence. And as she closed the file, she knew her greatest test was no longer the shot itself. It was the space around it, the silence that came before, the silence that followed. She had entered the world she had once only imagined, the world where every trigger pull mattered. The storm was no longer coming. The storm was here. What does it feel like? The first time a bullet leaves the barrel, not for paper, not for steel, not for applause, but for flesh and blood. Martinez had imagined it 1,000 times. Training had prepared her for wind, distance, pressure. But no training could prepare her for the silence of that choice. The silence of knowing someone would not rise again after the crack of her rifle. The orders came without fanfare. A sealed envelope, coordinates, a name she didn't know, a place she had never been. The language was clipped, stripped of humanity. High-value target, confirmed hostile, expected in sector. No details, no history, just an assignment. Her unit deployed under night's cover. The air was thick with desert dust, the stars sharper than any she had seen back in Texas. She carried her like a shadow, the weight familiar now, almost comforting. Yet beneath her calm exterior, her chest burned with unease. They moved in silence, their boots sinking into sand, every sound swallowed by the vastness. At dawn, she lay in position on a rocky ridge, scope trained on a compound below. The mission was simple on paper: observe, confirm, engage if necessary. Simple, but nothing about it felt simple. Hours passed, she barely moved. The sun climbed higher, shadows shifting across the compound, figures emerged, men talking, children running, women hanging laundry that swayed in the heat. Her orders were clear, but her scope showed her more than orders. It showed her lives, the kind of details no briefing ever included. The way a boy kicked a deflated ball, the way a woman wiped her hands on her apron before pulling her daughter into an embrace. Her finger hovered near the trigger, but she didn't squeeze. Not yet, not until confirmation. The radio crackled softly. Target expected within the hour. Stay sharp. Swallowed hard, her breathing slowed. She remembered the competition, the silence before her record shot, but this silence was heavier, denser. It carried consequences no applause could erase. Then movement. A man stepped into view, tall, broad-shouldered, speaking with authority. Spotters confirmed the target. Her crosshairs locked onto him. Her breath steadied. She ran through calculations automatically. Wind speed, distance, bullet drop, perfect alignment. All she had to do was squeeze. But her eye caught something else. The boy again, darting into the yard, running close, too close. If she fired, if anything went wrong. Her heart pounded, training clashed with instinct, orders pressed against conscience. "Do you have the shot?" the radio whispered. She hesitated. "Yes." "Then take it." Her finger tightened. Sweat slid down her cheek. The boy was laughing now, chasing the ball across the sand. The man raised his voice, barking orders at others. The compound buzzed with movement. One pull, that's all it would take. But her mother's words echoed in her chest. Strength is not only in what you can do, it is in what you choose not to do. Her breath caught. She whispered into her mic, barely audible. "Not clean, too many civilians." A pause, static, then the voice again firm. "Hold, copy that." She exhaled slowly, the air trembling in her lungs. The crosshair stayed steady, but her finger eased off the trigger. Minutes dragged into hours. The boy disappeared inside. The women retreated. The yard emptied until only men remained, gathered near a truck. The target stood in the open, no civilians nearby. The radio again. Windows open, Martinez, take it. Her body felt heavy. Her mind screamed with the weight of the choice. But her breathing steadied, her pulse slowed, and silence narrowed the world to the scope. She squeezed. The roared, recoil slammed her shoulder. 3 seconds of eternity passed before the spotter's voice confirmed. Hit. Target down. The compound erupted. Shouts, scrambling, chaos below, but didn't hear them. She only heard the echo of her shot, the silence that followed. She had done it, not a competition shot, not a training exercise, a life ended, a mission complete. Her chest ached with the weight. Pride didn't come, relief didn't come, only silence. Hours later, after exfiltration, after the debrief, she sat alone under the desert stars. Her rifle lay beside her, silent now. Her hands trembled not from fear, not from weakness, but from the realization of what she had carried. She thought of her parents, her father's pride, her mother's wisdom. She wondered what they would say if they knew. Could they understand, could she? Found her there, his voice low, steady. First one. She nodded. It never leaves you, he said. It's not supposed to. If it ever does, you're not human anymore. Swallowed hard. How do you live with it? Looked out at the horizon, his face unreadable. You don't live with it, you carry it. Day after day. The weight never gets lighter, you just get stronger. She nodded, though the words didn't comfort her. Not yet. That night when she finally slept, dreams came. The boy's laughter, the woman's embrace, the target's face blurred and fatting, the echo of the shot endless. She woke before dawn, heart racing, sweat clinging to her skin. She pressed her palms to her eyes, whispering to herself, patience, endurance, silence. The mission was over. The report was filed. The base would call it success. But inside, the silence had just begun. Because this wasn't a competition, there would be no applause, no trophy, only the echo of decisions carried alone. And deep down she knew this was only the first. More would come. And each one would carve itself into her, in ways no one else could see. How do you measure the cost of silence? Not the silence of doubt, not the silence of mockery, but the silence that follows when a life has ended and the world keeps moving as if nothing happened. For Martinez, that silence became her companion. Her first mission was called a success. Command commended her discipline. Her report was crisp, professional, without a trace of the storm inside. On paper it was clean, efficient, a model operation. But paper never tells the truth. The truth was in her eyes at night, staring at ceilings she couldn't rest beneath. The truth was in the way she replayed the moment, the boy chasing the ball, the woman wiping her hands on her apron before her finger tightened on the trigger. The truth was in the silence after the shot, when she realized she had stepped into a world she could never leave. She carried it quietly. To others she was the rising star, the sniper who had stunned the base, then proved herself in the field. Respect followed her everywhere. Soldiers who once sneered now sought her out, not just for advice but for guidance. She answered patiently, humbly, never flaunting, never boasting. But inside, she wrestled with a weight no one else could lift. Was right, it never left. It never was supposed to. Some nights she wrote in her notebook, not numbers now, not calculations, but questions. What does it mean to be proud of a shot that ended a life? When is silence strength, and when is it surrender? How do you measure dignity when it comes through violence? She never shared the words. They weren't for reports. They weren't for officers. They were for her, a way to carve order into the chaos she carried. Weeks turned into months. Missions came and went. Sometimes she took the shot. Sometimes she didn't. And in those moments of choice, she discovered something she hadn't known before. Strength wasn't just in pulling the trigger. It was in holding it, in saying no when orders said yes but her conscience whispered otherwise. Not every commander understood. Some grew frustrated with her hesitation. But others, the ones who had carried their own storms, recognized it for what it was. Not weakness, humanity. His reputation grew not only as a marksman but as a soldier who understood the gravity of her role. She wasn't reckless. She wasn't eager. She was steady, reluctant when needed, relentless when certain. And slowly that earned her something rarer than respect: trust. Henderson sought her out again months later. No smirk, no arrogance, just a soldier humbled. "You've changed the way I see this job," he admitted. "It's not about being the best shot. It's about being the right shot. I didn't get that before." Met his eyes quiet. "Neither did I, not until the silence taught me." He nodded, and for the first time there was no rivalry between them, only understanding. Her parents remained her anchor. She called when she could, never sharing details, only feelings. Her father's pride never dimmed, though he worried for the pieces of her she left behind with every mission. Her mother's words remained steady, always reminding her that dignity was measured not in applause, not in victories, but in how she carried herself when no one was watching. And in that truth found her balance. She learned to live with the silence, not to erase it, not to conquer it, but to carry it with dignity. There were moments of light, too. A sunset over mountains after a mission, the sky painted in colors so sharp they felt unreal. A laugh shared with comrades in the rare hours of rest, laughter that reminded her she was still human. Letters from her mother, written in careful script, folded into her pack as reminders of home. Those moments didn't erase the weight, but they gave it shape. They made it bearable. In time became more than a sniper. She became a mentor, a voice for younger soldiers who felt the same doubt she once carried. She told them the truth, not that it was easy, not that the weight disappeared, but that patience, endurance, and silence could become strength if carried with dignity. Her story spread quietly, not in headlines, not in official reports, but in whispers across bases, across units. Whispers of a small soldier with steady hands and a silent strength that could not be mocked away. And through it all, never raised her voice. She never demanded recognition. She never sought applause. Because she had learned something deeper than any competition, any mission, any trophy could teach. Sometimes strength isn't loud. Sometimes courage doesn't shout. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts.